There's a reason the term was coined Destiny Killer, a saying so grinded down that my channel has even turned it into irony. But what if I told you there was a time when the untouchable, the tactile, golden Destiny 2 melted down into a red sludge? But to be killed in a genre you can control, this would have to be internal. This video in our series going over expansions isn't meant to be controversial. For that to be the case, there has to be room for an argument. But with a player drop-off as massive as this, and the even greater amount of changes to Destiny 2 after this DLC, there is no better title than the DLC that killed Destiny. So we're going to look back at the Curse of Osiris as a whole and ask one swelling question, fueled by the power of hindsight. Was it really that bad? This video, much like others in the series, will be pretty long, so make sure you use chapters as a guide if you want to look back or learn about this time, and just like in the other videos, the conclusion and overall thoughts are going to be at the very end. Just like and subscribe so YouTube gets to recommend my endless yapping sessions. Okay, on to Curse of Osiris. Giveaways, emblems, final shape and giveaway emblems? Do I have your attention, Destiny players? Just have a listen and download World of Tanks and send me proof that you did via Twitter, Instagram, Discord with a screenshot. Plus, World of Tanks is pretty cool, and they supported this video, so please have a listen. World of Tanks is a team-based MMO action game dedicated to mid-20th century armored tank combat. Stand aside, Red War tanks. We got a whole world of tanks now. You have huge tank arsenals, massive battles that are free to play with 210 million players. History and action slapped together. And you know I love me some history. New players. For you, I have a link that will get you $20 of free stuff in the game. Bring a platoon of 3 players with you max. If you have questions, the tutorial has been tweaked to improve the new player experience as well. So what are you waiting for? Someone to oil up the tank? Don't worry, I got you. Thanks to World of Tanks, click the link, and now back to Osiris. For better or worse, depending on who you ask, Destiny 2 has a flow with its seasonal models that each offer a new activity, a dungeon, some system changes, and whatever else that fits the season theme. There's a predictable amount of content, and while nowadays everyone and their mothers are sick of this format, back then, it was a lot less predictable. Curse of Osiris, just like vanilla Destiny 2, were both supposed to raise the bar from Destiny 1, but little did we know that Destiny 2 would knock down all of the pillars of what made Destiny special, and replace it with some good changes and mostly bad changes. I want to quickly address people who got really mad at me for calling Destiny 2 Red War a DLC. I know it was Destiny 2, the brand new game, but it's a continuation of an ongoing story, so I apologize for misspeaking, even though I hoped you would know what I meant. So happy some people were more focused on this little mistake than an almost 2-hour video talking about Destiny. Curse of Osiris, to the longtime Destiny veterans, was looked at with high expectations. This had to right all of the wrongs that vanilla D2 set, while delivering a DLC worthy of an extra $20 price tag. Vanilla Destiny 2 changed just about every system of loot and gameplay. Random rolls, gone. Sandbox for power, turned to balance. Rewards for time investment, gone. Replaced by public events for all of the best loot in the game. Destiny 2 was bleeding players and not giving many reasons to come back, especially when there was a giant growing in the gaming space named Fortnite. It's a tired argument nowadays that games are losing players when there's just really nothing to do, or it's a single player game. How could you lose players? It's just exhausting. We know why people leave or come back to games. But for Destiny, to lose players very quickly after its release did spell some trouble for Bungie. Many players expecting Curse of Osiris to right the wrongs were in for a rude awakening. Many players didn't understand that it would take a long time to fix the cracks in Destiny 2's pillars. As SkillUp described it,
this product is just more of the same blandness that Destiny 2 was, only cranked up to be even more grindy, more repetitive, and more banal than ever before. And the lack of quality speaks to a commercial indifference that is for me a cardinal sin.
There was a lot that would be the reason for players to be angry at this DLC, and I don't want this video to be a defense towards Curse of Osiris, nor do I want this to be another giant dump on it. I just want to look at this time and see it for what it was, compared to a scenario if Destiny players were to get this today. It's easy to dunk on something without the context of why, just as it's easy to claim a DLC is so great when you're enjoying it, but then realize that it can actually make a game worse with its changes that still impact it today. Is he still talking about how much he didn't love the Witch Queen's seasons? Yeah? Yeah, it's alright, I'll take care of this. So, what did Curse of Osiris do that was so offensive anyways?
Heroic. Now let's check this out. I promised before that this was the most rewarding public event, and there we have it. We have 2 chests for a change, and check out those sweet moves.
Yeah.
For starters, think about Vanilla Destiny 2 like a big jar of vanilla cookies. Sure, they are sweet. There's plenty of them as you mow them down, but once you ate them up, there's really only stomach aches and regret. See, in the past, Destiny 1 wasn't perfect either, but it was like a full course meal in comparison, and what it did have was depth to what you were consuming. Not just empty sugars, fats, and well, you get the point. It was tasty, but not satisfying, and long term, the game wasn't stable. It was like one big expansion that wronged all of the rights before it, and now Curse of Osiris was faced with an impossible task. Fix all of it 3 months after Destiny 2's launch, when, at the beginning of the launch, people were pretty pleased with Red War. So, gamers, self-included, not understanding what development timelines looked like at the time, collectively asked for something that was impossible to be done. Surely, this will go well.
The only real interesting feature is the infinite forest.
And then at the end, we had an amazing boss mechanic for penalties.
Allows you to play
and then everything else for the DLC just went to shit.
And future of Mercury. But frustratingly, with all the potential of time travel, its story is forgettable too. Well, Bungie did attempt to address the introduction of things by
People came to see that so many of the things that had made Destiny great over its 3-year journey had been ripped out.
And it does nothing to address the community's loud cries for fixes.
Anger grew as more and more people.
Oh, so the only changes I could really find from Curse of Osiris were sandbox based. Recovery got a bump, and so too did the damage from all supers on bosses. Hunters, Titans, and Warlocks got some ability tuning, and some weapons were reeled in while others were buffed. But Curse of Osiris's problem was that there was no change, and it wouldn't really take course until the next DLC. With no communication of major change from Bungie yet, and with an Eververse holding more substance than the activities themselves, the player base was ready to tear the place down.
170 bright dust every single Ingram. You would have to spend the equivalent of $10,358.20 to obtain every single item, as well as purchase every single DLC and the expansion.
As Dado described in his video,
if Destiny 2 was a plain piece of grilled chicken on beautiful china plateware, Curse of Osiris is the same, albeit smaller piece of grilled chicken with a couple of grains of salt on it. My question is, where are the mashed potatoes? Where's the gravy? Where's the biscuit? Where's the barbecue sauce? Where's the spice? Where are the risks? Where is the evolution?
So let's go back to another Destiny 2 that you cannot play anymore, and show you what Curse of Osiris was all about. For the sake of hindsight, I can remember free-to-play offering the Red War, Curse, and Warmind. And when given the entire first year of Destiny 2 to play, Curse was inoffensive. It didn't do anything memorable. In fact, it was more of a case of missed opportunity with a neat little grind to complete in the background. But viewed as a package with Red War and Warmind, it would have been nice to play. But on its own, it would nuke the player base, and people just weren't coming back. Between the release of Destiny 2 and soon after Curse of Osiris, the player base hit its all-time low, retaining almost nobody from launch. If the Red War was the catalyst kicking Bungie into the Forsaken mentality, or correcting course, then Curse of Osiris was the reminder that it needed to happen. A big part of this missing story that I think Curse of Osiris gets pinned for is the drop-off of players. But we need to look at other games in the space that were yoinking players, and none were as impactful as Fortnite. Fortnite was the game to play in 2017, and it hit one of its largest spikes around the time of Curse of Osiris. I can tell you that creator friends and creator legends of the past like Tfue, C-Day, Dr. Lupo, Crafty, and more had left Destiny because PvP wasn't doing it for them, and Fortnite was the new hotness.
Old and busted, new hotness.
The same reasons you might feel Lightfall was bad, but the player drop-off was also pointing to more games being interesting at the time. I figured that an important point for Curse of Osiris. These players would also just not return to Destiny. There is a lot of players from Destiny 2's release that left the game and just never came back. I know we talk about Forsaken being this glorious revival, and Shadowkeep being this free-to-play entry point for people that did leave the game. But I'm serious when I say that there are people who have not played Destiny since Destiny 1 and Vanilla Destiny 2 for a reason. Anyways, Osiris was the centerpiece of intrigue with this DLC, the shining golden warlock of mystery, and ultimately hope for the series. The promise that we were seeing Mercury, this place that was only accessible via a social space if you went flawless in PvP elimination for the best rewards, was enticing now as an explorable planet. This made Mercury seem like it was going to be pristine and prestigious. So what was Mercury really like when we got it? What was Osiris like, this warlock that we assumed to be dead? And what was the ultimate conflict? Alright, you cute looking son of a gun on the other side of the screen, we have a story to yap on about. And, well, it's not too long. Doesn't mean I'm not going to break everything down to the most minute, useless detail, because goddammit, I like my videos long! Curse of Osiris started off like this.
When the Red Legion attacked, it almost cost us everything. It took a miracle to save us. The awakening of the Traveler. This is our new beginning, provoked by the Traveler's light. Our war is just beginning.
So we get a little recap, and I gotta say, I like that we're reminded of our accomplishments before. It makes you feel like you're a part of the universe's story. Then we are brought to one of the best introductions of a character, full stop.
Ominous rocks, killer robots, people in mortal danger. Seriously, aren't you tired of this?
Fatigue is a distraction from our purpose, as are complaints.
Oh, I haven't begun to complain yet. Ouch! Ugh! Now I'm complaining.
Focus, Sagira.
Reach for the sky, big guy. Need help? Again?
I've got it, thank you.
Well, Osiris. What did you see? Slow down. Wait. I thought Oh, Go! To your left! 2 o'clock! Medium range! You're welcome! You know, I can't help but notice that even with all of reality to explore, you keep picking the places where they shoot at us.
We can't stay here. If the Vex succeed, it's the end of everything. Sakura, we can see your light. You have to go.
Nope, not leaving you. Without me, there's no coming back.
If I don't stop the Vex, there won't be anything to come back to. I'm doing this for the both of us.
Don't you even... Osiris!
It's here in this next cutscene where I think the game does a great job of telling us some of the accolades of Osiris, and establishing his importance after showing him in action before. Normally, I hate when Destiny, and really any entertainment, decides to tell us about the great heroes, and not show us. But Osiris at least did a little of that. I want to see more in the campaign, but for now, I thought this was fine. Ikora says one more thing that's interesting.
Most Guardians won't even speak Osiris's name. He was the only Vanguard commander ever exiled from the city. And the man who taught me what it means to be a warlock.
I love this idea of a rogue guardian. It adds a little new spice to an all too perfect light versus dark saga. So far, you might think this DLC is just more cutscenes. And yeah, you're right. But we have one other important piece of the story from Ikora.
The traveler transformed Mercury into a garden world.
Welcome to Mercury, Guardian. The signs told me you would come.
What a coincidence. We followed the signs here too. And by signs, I mean facts.
I am Brother Vance of the followers of Osiris, Keeper of the Lighthouse, and Oracle of the Lost Prophecies. Ikora Ray, Osiris's greatest student.
Brother Vance, Osiris's greatest fan.
Brother Vance! Good to see ya. Last time Destiny players saw this man was in Destiny 1, being the #1 fan of the Osiris fan club. Good to see he's living in the lighthouse now. Then again, he probably lived here the whole time and just rented out the lighthouse to Guardians who went flawless in trials on the weekends. Mercury was, well, I mean, it's a Destiny location. It was bound to be breathtaking in the visuals, and we'll see that there were different versions of it too, only adding to the potential of this location. Destiny's artists always deserve nothing but the best, because they really knocked it out of the park every single time. Mercury was restrictive, as you'll find out, with most of its location only being explorable via activities, which was really disappointing and questionable at best. Part of me wonders if this was a technical limitation like a lot of Destiny's issues seem to be, but it still sucks. Mission 1 was called The Gateway, an introduction to Mercury and apparently a gateway to the Infinite Forest, a place nobody has ever returned, not even Osiris. That's a bold statement for Mission 1. In this mission, you become a little more familiar with the Vex and take out some rather large bad guys.
Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if Osiris hadn't sent you to me. In return, the followers of Osiris can help you revive his ghost. We have a hidden temple on Earth. Take Sagira to these coordinates. I will notify the followers that you are coming. Now that the lighthouse is safe, we can prepare for Osiris's return. All of the lost prophecies are coming to pass. I'm finally going to meet Osiris.
Ancient Vex like this weren't seen since the Vault of Glass back in vanilla Destiny 1. It was really cool to see them return, but a part of me wishes that this type of Vex had some other attack for Destiny 2. even if very small. Think about how the Shadow Cabal have some sort of small enhancements, their stasis fallen, that sort of thing. So you took down the Vex and shot a large cube to meet Brother Vance in person. Bungie was so good at teasing little world changes like this. I loved how the lighthouse came to life in the intro. While being a very by-the-books Destiny mission, this had some chops to it I wasn't expecting. It clearly took very little for me to be interested in Destiny's world, if even pulling the blinds up did it for me. The next mission was called a Deadly Trial, where apparently there is a temple in the EDZ this whole time that we can revive Sagira. Ikora tells us that it's just a simple radio tower, so we trek through the Lake of Shadows strike area. One thing I should note here while this footage rolls on of journeying to the radio tower is that you could actually go through this area on a Sparrow in the Lake of Shadows strike until Lightfall, where Bungie revamped this strike, aka added annoying stuff to a strike that was one of my favorites. But that's neither here nor there. We're back in 2017 fighting the Fallen for control of the tower. Eventually, after a battle, you gain access to the radio tower and find a shrine of Osiris.
The followers. We're too late.
Great work you did looking through the EDZ, Ikora. You really searched. We find that the followers of Osiris are dead before we could get there.
Let me take a closer look. This is heavily modified Vex tech. I've never seen anything like it before. Let me try something. Wait, something's happening. What is
going on? Whoa! New shelf. Who? Did you actually just put me in a strange machine you've never seen before? Who does that?
Sagira.
Ikora. Great. Glad you're still around.
Look, we've got to move right now. Osiris is in over his head as usual, and I need to... Wait, where are we? Who are you? Oh, never mind. We've got to get to Mercury.
Freaky Friday for Destiny? Guys, I think I kind of like this plot idea. The ghost was always an untouched element of Destiny 1, so Destiny 2 tried to expand on it. Gaul ripping out her light, Sagira becoming a new voice for our ghost, Cade. So we head back to Mercury for the Beyond Infinite mission, and this time we can go through the Saint 14 portal and see what the Infinite Forest was all about. We are brought into this vestibule, this vault of glass-like area that I completely forgot about until diving into this video. This was one of the only times I can remember a Destiny mission having 0 enemies. It felt irregular, making the atmosphere almost uncomfortable. Then we get to meet one of the Osiris copies.
Sagira, you shouldn't be here. And you brought someone new with you.
Who? Oh, him? Get this. He's a friend of Ikora's.
Send word. Sagira has returned. Osiris sent you away for your own safety. Your presence here puts everything at risk.
Well, guess what? He needs me.
New timelines are expanding. We must create reflections to explore them.
This actually does a great job to establish how powerful Osiris really was, and I wish Bungie would have continued with the Osiris timelines in the game, at least in this presentation. In the lore, of course, Osiris is always doing this, but in-game, it was rare to ever see an Osiris clone after this. Again, in hindsight, it's always easier to make these claims, but I think it could have been a nice Easter egg to at least see an Osiris clone every once in a while in an activity. So all of the vestibule was a build-up for something Osiris didn't want us near, because it was just so dangerous.
Where's the real Osiris?
You cannot go to him.
What? What did he find? What's so bad that it could scare Osiris?
Behold, the Infinite Forest. Planet-sized prediction engine, simulating trillions of realities in parallel, all geared towards a single Vex purpose.
The Infinite Forest had notional value, but I think it should have stayed notional for a reason. I think Bungie's ambitions to bring the Infinite Forest to life, while commendable, was a large disappointment of this DLC. And we've seen 2 tokens and a blue. For all of the hype, the Infinite Forest was not this labyrinth the way you'd think. It was a line next to the door with a small amount of enemies blocking your path. No real mechanic either, just shoot and interact. This resulted in the Infinite Forest becoming so tedious to trek through that players just started using lion rampant exotic boots and a sword to infinitely sword dash to the next room. In the future, Bungie would try to shake this area up, but it still wasn't received well. The Haunted Forest was just a dark theme of this, while you ran from knights and killed bosses to go on to the next wave of the same thing, and it was fine. The Verdant Forest was the only time this was truly infinite, spawning a boss every 10 rooms for loot. That was until you hit the 400s, where the game couldn't handle players doing that, and it resulted in crashes. There's a reason the Verdant Forest never came back, and a reason that the Infinite Forest, much like most of Mercury, has been sunset. Back to our mission though, Osiris shows us where it all began.
First, I will show you where it all began. Mercury. Untold centuries ago, before the Vex arrived.
Okay, so Curse of Osiris is just Dune. This is where we finally get somewhat of a central Vex villain. See, the Vex that we knew of at the time was all this collective that would let themselves die to fulfill their ultimate goals in the correct timeline. I know that's an oversimplification, but bear with me because Panoptes was the first real named Vex villain with motivation. We just ripped Atheon out of the Vault of Glass in Destiny 1 after all. Panoptes has one true purpose.
Panoptes has a single purpose. Reshape reality for the Vex. And only the Vex. All this started with a single Vex. Will it end with the arrival of a single Guardian?
The mission continues on an infinite forest, but then Clone Osiris tells us why regular Osiris was exiled.
Osiris wrote the lost prophecies to warn the other Guardians, and they sent him away. You cannot exile the future.
I like this. It gives the exact gravity of why the Vanguard would exile him to begin with, and it does add weight to the politics of the tower. There is no war in the tower. Osiris then shows us the future the Vex wants. The future Mercury could fall into if they win.
But none of us have discovered a timeline where we succeed. This is what it looks like when we fail. This is the future the Vex want.
The lighthouse. This is what Osiris saw.
Neither light nor darkness exists anymore. The sun's warmth is gone. All life lost.
Then we meet the Yu-Gi-Oh card himself, Panoptes.
Panoptes, he's found us.
It's time to do.
Go. You're more important than any of us now.
Next steps were to meet Ikora, and Bungie did learn a bit from the Red War campaign with exotics. So this time, Ikora had legendary weapons to choose from instead. The next mission was called Deep Storage, a trip to Io to steal a map to the Infinite Forest. Now, part of me questions why we ever had to leave Mercury, but I think that it kind of makes sense to establish world building. We know the Vex have a hold on Io, and the Pyramidion was basically their giant kingdom. So Sagira and Ikora go back and forth, reflecting on choices they both made after Osiris's exile, and fight through the Pyramidion strike with a small change at the end of it, where instead of a giant hobgoblin, we have a pretty boring plate mechanic and the map in plain sight. I think this mission is one of the weakest of the DLC. And there's a reason I couldn't remember this until we watched it back. And if you like strikes as missions, oh boy, do I have some news for you. Now that we have the map, we can do the Tree of Probabilities mission. And if you're wondering, yes, this is a strike. Now, Bungie, for a bit of time, tried putting strikes in as missions, probably to introduce new players to the strike playlist and blend a strike into the campaign. The thing about strikes to this point, however, was that they were their own short stories, and that's one of the reasons that I think people liked them. Sure, you were fighting a war against Oryx and the Taken, but you could also take a break to fight the Shield Brothers. The Tree of Probabilities was more of this style, but crammed into the main story, so it felt like it was there to just buy time. And this affected how I felt about strikes in Curse of Osiris. If I just played it in the campaign, why would I go out seeking the new strike when there's not really great loot to begin with? This strike was a banger though. It involved Cabal, it had Sparrow Racing League moments, this was Bungie's way of kind of telling us that Sparrow Racing League wasn't going to return, and a really great boss introduction.
Is going to be trouble. And he's gonna be worse.
I did love this strike, and I did love that Bungie tried to give us some new loot with the DFA hand cannon, but I don't remember anybody really using this thing. The next mission was named Hijacked, and if you're wondering, yeah, this one's filler, it's not a strike. This tells us we need a Vex core for power on Nessus. I know Bungie put Vex on Nessus, but I felt this mission was so unnecessary. You run around Nessus tracking Vex and killing them, dabbling in less explored pieces of the Red War campaign, and standing on a plate in a lost sector area, and killing a Hydra. That's it. Why are we here? The next mission is called, well, it's another strike. Come on. This is a garden world. Well, what can I say about this strike? It's another banger that delves into the past Mercury landscape, and this one does have a little bit more to do with the story. In the mission, the goal is to find the algorithm that produced the Infinite Forest to discover a weakness of Panoptes. I wish this story showed us more of Panoptes, or that Panoptes had any sort of personality. This big guy was very much evil for the sake of being evil, and we never really learned what the Vex's ultimatum was. This was the Grandmaster strike that everyone feared before it was sunset. And this final fight was against a large rotating Cyclops. The loot was the ship Universal Wave function, which was pretty forgettable. But ultimately, this strike is missed to this day. One neat portion was after you beat the strike, there was a little bit more mission after completing it. Once the Cyclops was dead, a path formed.
Bingo.
Scanning. Isolating Panoptes patterns. Overlaying onto the map. And... got him! Panoptes always ends up in the same coordinates. It's over. This is how we beat the Vex.
I've detected a change. A new future. I will inform Osiris.
Wait. A defensive subroutine? New reality branch is forming. No! No!
Where are we? Mercury? How did we get back here? The last thing I remember, we were in the EDZ. We found that device and then... wham! Oh, I feel so strange. Like someone's rearranged all the furniture in the house, except the house is my brain. All right, look, I never thought I'd have to ask this, but who else has been inside my head? Accessing memory core. Huh, you've been busy. Correction, you've been busy without me. I don't know how I feel about that. Wait a second, there's something else in here with me. Encoded hollow images. Big ones, definitely Vex. Look, I can't decrypt those files, or open the gate. We need backup. We need Ikora. Good idea, right? You're welcome. Wait, why did I just say that?
The final mission of the... final mission? Yeah, compared to the Red War, Curse of Osiris was trying to punch up, but it forgot its belt. If we are taking away the strikes, we are looking at 5 missions, but really 2 or 3 that are memorable, including the final one. Again, this is a $20 DLC versus the $60 new game, so I get it, but this was not going to win players back either. The final mission was named Omega.
Over the gateways. We don't have years, so it's open but unstable. Go!
Now that Ikora could have done this the whole time, we move through the Infinite Forest once again.
We've got to get to Panoptes before Osiris does. Without Sagira, if he dies for good.
Funny enough, Bungie would use this exact plot point to move forward with the Savathûn storyline. That's a nice callback to this idea brought forth in Curse of Osiris. Then we get a square off against the big man Panoptes himself. Panoptes was a really neat design, a great idea on paper, but in execution, Panoptes' fight is not even against him. It's against the enemies he spawns in. Then an arc charge makes him one large bullet sponge. The spectacle was the best part of it, with the Osiris clones helping.
Block it for as long as I can. You must take down its defenses. Use the arc charge. I can give you a clear shot at its eye, Guardian.
Panoptes died a pretty boring villain with an epic design. Now, I'm not one to ask for reskins, but since Bungie has brought so many villains back from the grave, why hasn't Panoptes been brought back for a better fight?
Vex's mind is destroyed, and the path to their dark future is gone with it.
And in case you were wondering, our guardians were amazing.
Our guardians? Huh. My guardian. Guardian thief.
Osiris, it's been a very long time.
Too long, I was going to say student, but well, that word is too small for you now.
I've had other teachers. Time, pain, A guardian who makes a habit of the impossible, who I'm proud to call a friend.
The world has changed.
So has the city. You could come back with me.
No, my place is here now. We stopped the Vex this time, but many equations lead to the same solution. If they were ever to find another... Besides, I predicted many things, but I never saw you. Now we have a future. The pathway to the forest will be open if you ever need to find me. Or if you want to talk.
I'd like that.
Great. Galaxy saved. Friends again. Our big hero over here. And by the way, you're welcome.
Come, little light. We have infinite realities to explore. And all the time in the world.
Now that the story is over, I think it was pretty bad. I don't think that the missions are good, but I do think the missions on Mercury at least were more interesting on a look back. The other ones were a waste of time. At the time, a lot of the reviews were that the story felt isolated from the overarching storyline, but in hindsight, Destiny worked better as a game with stories that were isolated instead of putting attention to the main story in every activity. One of the big reasons I enjoyed seasons before Beyond Light was that they felt that they could end, and that wasn't a weekly ongoing trip to the holoprojector. I wouldn't say that this story was good, but going back on our overarching question of whether this was horrible, was it a story that could kill Destiny bad? No. I think the Mercury missions have enough memorable moments that I wish players could experience them in the game now. With the story out of the way, we have the rest of Curse of Osiris, which includes loot, quests, and I would say strikes, but we just saw all of them. PvP, and of course, the raid layer. Typically, it's thought that the campaign was too short, the Infinite Forest was not well designed, and the side content was lackluster to okay at best. The Eververse, which we mentioned before, became the understandable villain, and the center focus of why people were so mad at Bungie, the business. Sound familiar? It's time we talk about the lackluster activities, and no better example of this can be found than the Infinite Forest. The future and past Mercury. What if I told you that you couldn't access these areas unless you were in an adventure? That's right. For Mercury being this infinite explorable destination, it was by far the smallest patrol space. So what was there to do then? There was these objectives called prophecies, which were a massive grind. I am not joking when I say the amount of time you could spend doing this grind, complemented by RNG materials for dropping. These were called Radiolarian Culture, and they were common material that would drop from public events and world chests. After grinding for 10 of these, you could turn them in for a concentrated Radiolarian Culture, which only dropped from public events at a much rarer rate. Then there was Paradox Amplifiers, which were from activities but followed the same path with Advanced and all. Finally, Fossilized Hermaean Blossoms, which only dropped from Trials of the Nine and Nightfalls. Surprisingly, Fossilized Blossoms were not that difficult to get a drop, but oh man, those Paradox Amplifiers were. The reason for all of this grind was because Destiny 2 had no random rolls on weapons, and there wasn't really an endgame with depth. So the best temporary solution was to incorporate the Curse of Osiris weapons into a long grinded quest incorporating RNG and the main endgame activities people were participating in. The problem was that it just told people to do one new public event on Mercury over and over again. This public event was fine the first few times, but there was only so many times I cared about this big Minotaur and slingshotting back and forth for a couple of towers. Was it more difficult? Yeah. Was it worth it?
And check out those sweet moves.
Yeah.
To support this grind, Bungie laid out a string of adventures to complete for materials. And, well, materials. The adventures are very forgettable. The Up and Up is just the Vex simulating Fallen in the future Mercury world. It asks you to run through the Infinite Forest, defend some areas, jump up some steps, and open a chest. The next one was called The Runner, and it's a similar style but against the Cabal. What I did like about this was the Cabal we chased were genuinely booking it.
Why are you running?
Ultimately, it's just another long loading screen in the Infinite Forest. I have sped up this footage, but look at just how long we're still running. This adventure boils down to chasing a Cabal in circles, and is mostly forgettable. The final adventure, was called Bug in the System. And if you think this is about the Hive being simulated by the Vex, you are very correct. This time we are in past Mercury and need to defend a tower against the Hive, something Into the Light would shamelessly steal 6 years later. Jokes aside, this was the best of the adventures, but that's not saying a lot. The ultimate goal of these adventures never led to an exotic quest. It never led to anything except heroic versions that were daily and dropped materials to get the prophecy board weapons. These were also used as steps for the weapons as well. It makes me wonder if getting the weapons unlocked could lead to RNG rolls on the weapons for potential god rolls. Would these have been that bad? I don't know. I'm curious to know what you think. Speaking of that quest, there were 10 total weapons from it, and as we mentioned before, none of these had random rolls. And realistically, very few were insanely good. Garden Prodigy was the Scout, Jack Queen King 3 was the Hand Cannon, the Machina Day 4 Pulse, Soul Pariah and the Conqueror were both SMGs. Traveler's Judgment was a sidearm, West of Sunfall was a cool looking hand cannon that was not good, Infinite Pass 8 was another pulse rifle, Null Calamity was an auto rifle, and Future Safe 10 was the sword. Out of all of these, I can think of 2 people were actually using, but none of them were gotta have it good, except the secret 11th weapon. See, this entire quest was for the best heavy legendary shotgun in the game named Perfect Paradox. At the end of this very long grind, this could be yours. But there was so much impact on how this was done that I think the rest of the weapons suffered as building blocks to get here. About midway through your quest to unlock the tablets, you received a new quest from Brother Vance called Signal Light. It took you back to the Infinite Forest in search of Saint 14. By the end of this, you come up short finding him, and keep working on the tablets. But by the end of that, and receiving the Perfect Paradox, you do find Saint's dead body, with his helmet on and all. This was part of what made Saint 14's return even more special in the Season of the Dawn. A season I want to cover one day for this channel, so I won't speak too much on it now. This shotgun was a high rate of fire with a lot of damage potential, which is what made it best in slot for Curse of Osiris. It wouldn't stay for long as the best in slot, but its time was well suited, and it sounded amazing. Other than that, you collected the exotic Segura's Shell, the same ghost shell that was assisting you in the campaign. This was given for completing all of the prophecies, and it's a pretty neat cosmetic reward for your time. Segura's Shell didn't come with new voice lines, but it was the best shell in the game at the time. It produced telemetry for all 3 elemental weapon types, which you could use to increase your gunsmith rank. It also gave bonuses on Mercury. You got more glimmer and a chance to get extra tokens from the chests and completing events. Segura's Shell also detected caches and resources on Mercury from a huge distance, so yes, it was worth it for that little extra benefit. The prophecy board wasn't powerful enough to hold people over for a DLC though, but seen in the bigger picture, it was a great addition to the rest of the game. If you judge this as something to passively grind in the background, then it was inoffensive. But on its own, it was a pretty boring grind. So what else was there to do in this DLC? Well, Curse of Osiris had 5 exotic weapons, but only 2 I would argue are brand new. For returning or remix exotics, we have Telesto, the Jade Rabbit, and Crimson, which was a hand cannon Red Death. For new exotics, we had a Prometheus lens, which was so powerful in PvP that not only do I have a video dedicated to this event, but Bungie gave it to Xur in week 1 so everyone could laser tag each other. It was that strong. The final exotic was the Colony, a termite-seeking grenade launcher that was more of a gimmick than powerful, but it would eventually have its uses in raids as a way to bypass immune enemies. For exotic armor, Curse came packing with each class getting 4 exotic armor pieces. Titans, you got Aeon Safes, Kepri's Horn, Helm of St. 14, and Mark 44 stand-asides. Now don't be fooled by Aeons, these were really bad and given to Hunters, Warlocks, and Titans. A very, very creative idea, but it just didn't pan out. Hunters got the Gemini Jesters, Shinobu's Vow, and Graviton Forfeit. Graviton was an exciting thing to return, but it wasn't very good in Destiny 2. See, Graviton in Destiny 1 gave Shade Step. In Destiny 2, Hunters already had Shade Step. For Warlocks, the best of these was Ophidian Aspect, still one of the best exotics of all time. It just makes PvP better. The main issue with exotics were heroic public events dropping them so often. Genuinely, you'd think with how many exotics were here that this would be a long, fun grind, but that's just not the case. It was over and done with really quickly. Is this a root problem of Curse of Osiris, or was this just a larger system issue of Destiny 2? It's very easy to see that if players were given this content nowadays, they might be happier with it. It's still got issues, no doubt, and I don't think Curse of Osiris would magically be good. It would just be perfectly mediocre compared to its Destiny killer reputation it was given. But we still have one final activity to talk about, what I would call the main squeeze of Curse of Osiris to the endgame eye. On top of course, some loot refreshes in Trials of the Nine and Iron Banner, and ornaments that were at vendors? What? The first of 2 raid layers that we would receive in Destiny history. And the one that was world's first by an LFG team. Just like the Leviathan, I have made a video on this entire raid experience from start to finish. But, just like the Leviathan, I wanted to do one last talk about this raid layer. Let's be honest, I'll talk about this more in the future. If you played and didn't own Curse of Osiris then, you were kinda screwed. Leviathan level requirement was raised, which was nice if you owned Curse of Osiris and wanted to check out a harder prestige mode. But if you didn't own Curse of Osiris, then good luck getting the levels. There was no free to play, guys, so you just kinda had to have this. Don't worry though, Eater of Worlds was overall pretty bad. Like, you weren't missing much. You know it's bad if Bungie never announced a date or a time of release until it was just out. Now, obviously this was the first attempt at raid layers, and Eater was clearly made to expand the Leviathan as a whole, but this was not given the same treatment as Leviathan overall. Where Leviathan was a bunch of entry-level raid challenges with a boss at the end, and an interconnected level design filled with secrets, Eater was a linear set of clear the enemies, hopscotch, break a shield, then fight a boss. Obviously, I've watered down some of this, but other parts, I'm serious, there's a whole encounter where you just clear ads. Now, I will give credit to the fact that there was a rare chance at the first Destiny 2 Catalyst, with the Telesto hidden in the raid, but you needed all of the prophecy board weapons to complete this, and it was only on prestige mode at release. Now, I would give credit if prestige mode came out until Solstice of Heroes with Warmind. This raid had 2 weapons, no exotic, the Onion Knight armor. Wait, that's actually kind of sick. I will give credit to Argos becoming one of my favorite raid boss encounters of all time, added to the fact that the balance of the game made Argos' challenge fitting. I think a lot of the problems with Eater of Worlds were a lot more noticeable after the primary weapon changes in Forsaken, and power creep is the reason challenge at least went down. But let's also not kid ourselves. This raid layer was not very good for the standard that any raid finds itself in. Don't worry though, Bungie would make one of the best raids of all time and final bosses of all time in the next DLC. Overall, Eater of Worlds was just not going to hold people over. But we had a raid for Curse of Osiris the same way we did with Crota in the Dark Below. Except Crota at least had some good loot, and it was a full raid. So with Curse of Osiris out of the way, let's have one final chat. There may be a reason the term was coined Destiny Killer. The same way there is a reason that Bungie is often credited as the Destiny Killer. Destiny's struggles and issues in its first year were systematic, lacking depth in almost every department. But the content of Curse of Osiris, much like Red War, would have been completely fine if the game weren't held back by these decisions, and other games taking over the space of gaming. The thing to remember is that Curse of Osiris, on paper, came with a raid, 6 campaign missions, 2 strikes, 2 PvP maps, and 3, if you were on PlayStation, 3 adventures, tons of weapons, and armor with ornaments and refreshed loot in Trials of the Nine. Yet, because of all of the systems in the game, these were shallow at best. Curse is an appropriate word, because this DLC is the face of Destiny's darkest time. So was the Curse of Osiris really that bad? Yes, it was. This DLC had Eververse issues that I think rival some of the worst business practices in gaming. And Bungie would swing so far away from this with Forsaken that it's easy to forget how bad this was. This DLC had a boring campaign and a disappointing final boss, even worse adventures, and a public event leading the charge in terms of new content. The chase was fine for prophecy weapons, but the lists of things to grind were not appetizing. This had the worst raid in Destiny's history, and made even worse with growing concern that Bungie might not have been the heroes after all. But in ways, no. The Curse of Osiris was completely fine, and Fortnite was really something new, just taking the world by storm, leading to less players on Destiny during its mediocre time. It's insane to think about it, but I want you to really think to yourself, are some of the seasons better or worse than Curse of Osiris? If we combine some of Destiny's seasons, would they offer as much content as this? Destiny players might have just been spoiled for a long time with new and innovative for the time content, and Curse was just more of the same that we didn't love. But we can't say there wasn't a feast to sink our teeth into. Just some food for thought and just my opinion. I can't believe I've partially defended Curse of Osiris. We've really come full circle on this channel, haven't we? In the next video in the series, Bungie got back on track, and this DLC walked so Forsaken could soar through the skies. So I want to thank you so much for watching. Consider joining my Patreon and supporting the sponsor of the video for free stuff, because you get free stuff and a free game, and you can't really beat that. Thank you everyone, and have a wonderful day or night.